supposed to be. So this is Christopher Nolan's latest effort, 10 years after Inception, one of my favorite films. I even wrote a poster of it back there. Can you see? It's amazing. So this film had a lot of stuff to live up to. Yeah, I mean, this was literally forced into the cinemas pretty much by the power of Lord Nolan to try and salvage the summer. And it came out to let's just say some mixed reviews. So we'll get right into it. So I know someone has a lot to say about this. I'll throw it over to Mo first for your wonderful critique. All yours.
Yeah, I mean, Tenet is one of those films I don't even know how to begin to review, because I don't think anyone quite understands what went on in that film. So, I mean, I'll give a quick rundown of what I liked about the film. The film had a great starting premise where you have the main guy, played by John David Washington, who is being recruited by a mysterious person to help help pretty much save the world, avert World War III. The way World War III is brought upon this world is by the means of something called reverse entropy objects. Basically anything that can move backwards in the arrow of time while everything else around it moves in forward. So the premise is pretty interesting. It's definitely a new take on time travel, which essentially what this film is about. That made it seem like the movie was more complicated than it was, because this movie doesn't really have good storytelling in it. Any movie should be watched and should be judged on the merit of its storytelling, and it really doesn't hold up to the high standards of storytelling that Christopher Nolan has made us used to when it comes to his films. So John David Washington plays a good guy who is trying to save the world. He's joined by Robert Pattinson, who is his right-hand man. Yeah, so as the movie goes on, you realize the cool concept of this reverse entropy has boiled down to something that is a mind-crunchingly annoying puzzle piece, which is pretty much impossible to understand.
Pretty flat. But in the meantime, Elenia, what did you think?
I completely agree. I think it was made to be, it comes across more complicated than it actually is, because I started watching it last night and finished it this morning. And I've still yes, there was alcohol consumed in between, but I still understand the general premise of it, and I still understand it's not time travel as what people understand, going into a machine and popping up in another time. You either go forward or you go backwards. You can't just pop up in a random chosen time, which is an interesting take on time travel, I guess. My impression of the actor's performance is kind of like when you watch people doing Shakespeare but they don't understand what they're saying. So I don't think the actors were entirely 100% grasping the storyline. So their delivery comes across very monotonous and with no inflections or no expression of any real kind. Maybe the exception maybe with Robert Pattinson. I think he did pretty well. But it comes across like they're just saying words. There's no breaks in the phrases. There's no pauses for suspense or anything like that. It's very much line, 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 line. And if you're not 100% paying attention to the words that they're saying, you will miss something, and you'll get confused. You have to go.
You have a point. I saw an interview with Washington. I know it is Denzel Washington's son, by the way.
Yeah, it is.
Even in his
interviews,
when he was pregnant.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even though the name's Washington, he never really clocked onto it. But yeah, even in his interviews with the press, he couldn't really explain the film himself. So you kind of tell if he doesn't really grasp it, could he display it in the film?
Yeah, you can't.
And like I said,
that explains a lot. Yeah.
Because I really enjoyed the action scenes when they were sort of in both sort of normal time and then inverted time at the same time, and I appreciated the kind of intricacy that it would take to have both of those happening at the same time, switching between the two. I thought that was quite impressive. But yeah, the overall kind of story arc was badly communicated, I think, and I think it's because it's just had no idea.
I think the biggest weakness of this film is like, because I watched like the 10-year anniversary Inception that came out like a few months before, so it was a good time to compare the two because they're pretty similar in concept. But I think the biggest issue here is there's no character development. I don't know who this protagonist is. I mean, they don't even give him a name, which I think was a bad move. So we don't know his backstory. We don't know why he wants to save the world apart from just saving the world. It's just, okay, everyone, there's no reason for me to support this guy. Like Inception, he wants to see his kids, his family. That's the whole reason he's doing this, right? Whereas in this, I'm like, who is his organization? Like, it's just, there's nothing. He doesn't, and he really dropped the ball in that sense, because...
To elaborate a bit more on that, I think the casting was a bad cast. I didn't think John David Washington was the right guy for it. He would have been well suited for a more nuanced and emotional character, because his face is it's a softer face than I would expect for someone who is taking on the entire, trying to stop World War III. I would have thought Robert Pattinson would have played a better main character. Well, partly because you can see he's got seasoned actor vibes in him. John David Washington seems very out of place, and what you said, Elenia, is something that I'm realizing is something I picked up on, but I never actively recognized it, because his delivery was so monotonous and it was so flat, and most importantly, it was so quick, one after another. But now that I'm thinking about it, probably Nolan told him, look, you need to be the smartest guy in the entire room. So you need to appear smart. And to be appearing smart, you need to be able to capture all the concepts that's going on in the film without really taking a pause. And that's probably why he was like, he understood every concept that was going on, being explained to him, and made connections like a super brain. Like, he was just a bit too smart for even a Nolan film.
So I want to say a few things before we wrap this up quickly from my end. I think what they failed on firstly is they didn't have a character who was like out of water. Like in Inception, they had Ariadne, who they had to explain to stuff all the time, so we could like be in her position. Whereas here, we're just expected to know everything, which doesn't work. Secondly, the final third is just awful. It's just a Call of Duty war zone now with people just shooting people. I'm like, who are they shooting? Who are they? What's happening? Who's about? Where does this army come from? It was just a mess.
Yeah,
I mean, it looked cool from a visual perspective, but it just didn't work. And thirdly, the bad guy was just so generically bland. It's just an evil Russian. I'm like, come on, that's the guy. And we don't even know his plan is. Like, it happens in the future. What happens? We don't know. It's just a thing. So it's very poorly explained, but those are the few things.
The people in the future are never really explained either.
Yeah, it's just like kind of like they don't show it. They don't show anything. They just say it happens. Like, but show us like what happens in the future. Who's doing this stuff? It's just you have to accept it. And I think,
like you say, there needs to be a fish out of water character, which should have been John David Washington, and it's
exactly Robert and Pattinson.
Pattinson's the one that's sitting on a secret. He knows. And he knows everything, and he's like drip feeding. But Washington comes in and he's like, I'm big brain, I'm good.
Yeah, he's the smartest guy. He's not the fish of water. He's the smartest guy.
Exactly. So we're coming up to 15 minutes. So let's wrap this up quick. I'll go first. So we're going to change our scales to 10. I think 5. This doesn't really give us too much freedom. So for this, so quickly, I mean, it's a spectacle, but the storyline does not hold up. The characters are just so uninteresting, and the villain is just awful. So I'm gonna give it 4 out of 10. Okay, Mo.
Sorry, I cut off. I'll also probably give it a 4 or maybe 3.5 out of 10. It's a really, really poor movie. It shouldn't be watched. I'll never recommend it to anyone.
I'd go a 4 as well. So I gave Mulan 2 out of 5. So I'm gonna give that 4 out of 10 and this 4 out of 10 because I think both of them visually good. But lacking substance and character development and a good story arc, really. So I wouldn't watch them again, which is my overall kind of opinion of films. It's like, will I watch it again or not? And I think both of them I just won't watch again.